June 323 BC. In the sweltering heat of Babylon, a 32-year-old man lay dying. He ruled the largest empire the world had ever seen, stretching from Greece to India. He had never lost a battle. His name was Alexander, and he was running out of time. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, capital of Macedon, a kingdom the Greeks dismissed as half-barbarian. His father was King Philip II. His mother, Olympias, a fierce princess of Epirus, told her son a dangerous secret. His true father was not Philip, but Zeus himself. The boy grew up believing it. At 12, he tamed Persepolis, a black stallion no grown man could ride, after noticing the horse was afraid of its own shadow. Philip wept with pride. "Macedonia is too small for you, my son," he said. "Seek a kingdom worthy of yourself." For 3 years his tutor was Aristotle, the greatest mind in Greece, who taught the prince medicine, philosophy, and a love of Homer. Alexander slept with the Iliad under his pillow. Achilles, the hero who chose glory over long life, became his obsession and his blueprint. His father had built the perfect weapon, a professional army wielding the sarissa, a 6-meter pike massed in phalanxes that moved like a wall of iron thorns. Philip crushed the Greek cities, then prepared his masterpiece, the invasion of Persia, the superpower of the age. He never got the chance. In 336 BC, at his daughter's wedding, Philip was stabbed to death by his own bodyguard. Alexander was 20 years old. Within months, he executed his rivals, terrified the Greek cities back into line, and inherited his father's war. When Thebes rebelled, Alexander made an example no one would forget. The city that had once dominated Greece was burned to the ground, and 30,000 survivors were sold into slavery. Only the temples and the house of the poet Pindar were left standing. Greece went quiet. In 334 BC, Alexander crossed into Asia with roughly 40,000 men. As his ship approached the shore, he hurled his spear into the sand, claiming the whole continent as a prize won by the spear. He was 22. He would never see Macedonia again. At the river Granicus, he met the first Persian army and nearly died in the opening minutes, saved only when his friend Cletus severed the arm of an attacker in mid-swing. Then Alexander's cavalry shattered the Persian line and the gates of Asia Minor swung open. In the city of Gaudium stood a legendary chariot, its yoke tied with a knot no man could untangle. Whoever loosed it, the prophecy said, would rule all of Asia. Alexander studied it for a moment, then drew his sword and cut it in half. In 333 BC, at Issus, he finally faced Darius III, great king of Persia, and an army that vastly outnumbered his own. Alexander charged straight at the king himself. Darius panicked and fled, abandoning his army, his treasury, even his own wife and mother. The island fortress of Tyre believed it could ignore him. Alexander spent 7 brutal months building a causeway across the sea, dragging siege towers up to the walls. When the city finally fell, its defenders were shown no mercy. The message was clear: nowhere was safe. Egypt, weary of Persian rule, welcomed him as a liberator. The priests crowned him Pharaoh, a living god. And at the desert oracle of Siwa, so the story spread, the priest greeted him as the son of Zeus. Alexander never publicly denied it again. On the edge of the Nile Delta, he founded a city bearing his name, Alexandria, future home of the greatest library of the ancient world, and one of dozens of Alexandrias he scattered across 3 continents, seeds of Greek culture that would outlive him by 1,000 years. On the 1st of October, 331 BC, on the plain of Gaugamela, Darius waited with the largest army ever assembled, with scythed chariots and war elephants. Alexander's answer was a masterpiece of maneuver. He tore the Persian line apart and drove a wedge straight at the king. Darius fled again. Babylon opened its gates, so did Susa with its bottomless treasury. Then Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the empire, which Alexander's men looted and burned to the ground in a night of drunken revenge for the Persian invasion of Greece a century and a half before. Darius was finished, betrayed and murdered by his own officers. When Alexander found the body, he covered it with his own cloak and gave his enemy a royal funeral. Then he did the unthinkable. He declared himself great king, and began to dress like a Persian. His veterans hated it. The king now demanded rituals that looked like worship, married the Bactrian princess Roxana, and recruited Persian soldiers. Suspicion turned to blood. Philotas executed, old Parmenion assassinated, and Clytus, the man who once saved his life, killed by Alexander's own spear in a drunken rage. Still, he pushed east, through Afghanistan and beyond, chasing a horizon that kept receding. In 326 BC, at the river Hydaspes in India, he fought King Porus and 200 war elephants in a monsoon storm. It was his hardest battle and his last great victory. On the banks of the next river, the army finally broke. Rumors spoke of endless lands ahead, of kingdoms with thousands more elephants. His men, undefeated after 8 years and 20,000 kilometers, refused to take another step. For the only time in his life, Alexander surrendered. He led them home through the Gedrosian desert, a shortcut that became a death march. Heat, thirst, and sand killed more of his soldiers than any Persian army ever had. The survivors reached Babylon behind a king who was changing, harder, darker, drinking more. Then Hephaestion died, his closest friend since boyhood, the one person he called Alexander too. Grief unhinged him. He executed the physician, ordered a funeral pyre the size of a palace, and demanded the oracle declare his dead friend a god. In June 323 BC, after a night of heavy drinking, Alexander collapsed with a fever. For 10 days it consumed him. Poison, malaria, typhoid. No one knows. Asked on his deathbed who should inherit the empire, he whispered, "To the strongest." His generals tore the empire apart in 40 years of war. His son was murdered, his dynasty erased, and yet Greek cities, Greek coins, and the Greek language stretched from Egypt to the Hindu Kush for 1,000 years. He was 32 years old, and history has never let him die.